All right, so this is Jeff with the Big Hairy Dog, and this is a webinar on Prism purchasing and receiving, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so that's our agenda right there on the screen, which we'll be flopping back and forth probably and coming back to. So creating inventory. This is the Prism main first screen you see for anybody who hasn't seen Prism before. The main menu is down here in the bottom right corner. We're going to go to Store Operations and get started here. Now, if you guys have any questions, feel free to interject. Feel free to throw things in the post, in the chat. I got the chat open. I can see the chat. And or feel free to make comments as needed. Doesn't matter. I'm pretty flexible on that. If I'm not making myself clear, or if you don't understand, probably somebody else doesn't understand too. And so best if we just clear that up, right? Okay, merchandise. And again, this is Prism. This is the newest version. So I can see some of you that are joined have Prism and some don't. I recognize some of you I do not recognize, but all right. So merchandise, I think the first thing on our list here is in fact departments. I was ready to dive into inventory, but probably should take it in the right order here, right? So we'll look at departments real quick. We'll look at vendors and then items and styles. Question? All right, so so merchandise departments, and departments are pretty much the same as they are in previous versions, right? This browser is a little bit different, but basically it's set up very similar, right? If I pop into this one here, we have a department and we have a class and we have a subclass, right? So we have our default margins, markups, and coefficients over here, right? So if we do a 60 margin, it's going to be a 150 and a 2.5 in the respective fields, right? It's taxable, pretty much the same as other department codes to get set up and as previous versions of Retail Pro. So, and of course, previous versions can be upgraded to this version, right? So, list view, let's go back to list view, let's click search, and there's the department codes I have. This is a sandbox. The data in here is not, shall we say, outstanding, if you know what I mean. It's just things I threw in while I was testing stuff. So, I'm sure your data is better, but that's not saying much. All right, let's pop back up and go into merchandise vendors. Again, we're going to be really similar here as far as setting up. Now, they do a few small changes in the whole Prism interface. So in here, you see that we got a vendor code, we got a vendor name, we got an account number, we got payment terms, right? Those are all the same, right? But the addresses here, I could add a new address now. If I wanted to add a new address, I could pick an address type. So I could have several of these, right? I could actually make multiple addresses, and I can actually make multiple contacts, right? So each contact could have a name and a phone, and so you have sort of unlimited phone numbers now, right? You could just keep making contacts there and keep adding phone numbers. Makes sense so far? Everybody's on board? Yep, I don't see any questions. All right, fine. Okay, so let's go back to inventory, play around in inventory. All right, so in inventory, now, oddly, just as I started this webinar, I got an email from Retail Pro that said, just today, that said there's a 2.1.2 just got released. So I'll be upgrading this installation to that pretty quick here, but this is 2.1.1. So 2.0 was the first version. And I think some of the features that are in this one were lacking in that version, but this one has the styles, right? So that's the big difference here, I should say, is that I'm in item view by default, right? I hop in there, I'm in item view, there's items, right? I could click on an item, I could go to item details, I could see the item. There's my item. There's a bunch of tabs over here, so we can go and see different different aspects of that, right, of that item. I don't have anything. I guess I got one UDF set up too. It's exciting. All right, so now on the bottom here, we also have style view, so I could go into style view, and it would show me styles, right? Look up here. Let's go. Let's take a quick look for styles. Got anything that looks more like let's see here. Now let's go with something that I think will be possibly a little lag there. Nice. Okay, doesn't usually take that long. I wonder if it's because I got two items selected there. All right, I'll give it another few seconds, and if it doesn't resolve here, we're just gonna reset it. We're not gonna waste time on our webinar, you know. So, Prism itself, it's nice that we bump into a few extras. Right, here's the shortcut to Prism. I could use that, right, to get in there. Or I could come down to the proxy. So when you launch Prism, it launches the proxy, and you could just right-click the proxy and say open browser, right? That's another way to get in, right? And this one is not default. I clearly have a custom background, and I have custom screens. Retail Pro did a big customization to the screens and the look, and I grabbed that. Then I changed some of the pictures and some of the words. Normally it would say new receipt. It would say new transaction, not new receipt. Right? I hacked a few things. So let's see if we can go back to inventory and get the style thing working. Right? So now I'm gonna instead of starting with an item, I'm gonna go right to style. I'm gonna hit search. We're gonna find a style, something that I think is a pretty solid style. Not good data, just solid as far as being a style. And let's click on style view, and it went right in. So I think maybe I had two items selected, and it was very confused a minute ago. Right, so we've got the style definition on the left, right? We got the grid on the right. And obviously I've been hacking around with this. I added a 5XL to it for some reason. Not sure why, but there you go, right? The style can be pointed at other things. I'm going to point out right here that on the top right here, you can see that, is this, I got a question? Excellent. Thank you, Justin. Is the screen fully customizable as far as being able to rearrange headers, description one? I'm going to say it's a tricky answer. I'm going to say no. I'd like to say it is totally customizable, but it is customizable. But let's just take a quick diversion here and see if we can make that clear. This is HTML, so we can have somebody go in and modify the screens but you have to do it. You have to write the HTML. I guess that's the short answer, right? By default, a receipt has 2 lines on it, and I think mine has 3. So I have a customization, and of course, the receipt's not opening. Nice. So yes, you can get it customized, but it's going to require someone be able to write HTML. But that being said, then, like almost anything can be done, right? See, so this one here, when I ring an item up, I don't think we care. I don't even know what that is. Let's see, what do we got here? Oh, there it goes, pops in. It's a little slow. So you see how I have 3 lines. The default out of the box does not show both description 1 and 2, does not show size and attribute. So we had a customization written, which we kind of feel like anybody going on to Prism is going to want, right? You're all going to want to see the ALU, not the UPC per se. Most people want to see the ALU, not the UPC. I have a few exceptions to that, but everybody wants to see the size. If you have a size, you want to see it. You want to make sure you got the right size when you sold the item, right? So yes, everything is customizable, but not like previous versions where you could just right click and say, drag this over there and drop it in there, right? Yes, it is the big difference between compared to our Retail Pro 9 setup where you have options to show and rearrange and design and the layout manager. Yes, you don't have any of that. Here, you're basically right clicking and you're going to inspect. And then in the inspect window, which should have opened up by now, you have to then go find the code that you're looking for. And then you have to go copy that out into a customization file. So it's pretty much straight up HTML or JSON programming. It's doable, but it's also probably less frustrating to just have a programmer write it, I'm going to say. And we have a few avenues for that. All right, so back into inventory. As soon as we click into style mode, the scale button pops up, right? So you have access to your scales right here. You don't have to necessarily go into system preferences for that any longer. So we could build scales right here. I could just make add, click add, and drop a name in there and put in the sizes, right? Just add the sizes with the plus button, right? Gonna click new and pick a department code. So we're gonna go with, I guess, shirt. Pick a vendor, put in a description. Right, I usually like to put the style number in someplace, right? Give it a cost. So my default margin is calculating for me, but I have the option as the human being here, right? I have the option to change that to whatever I want, right? And then right here, one of the things we've requested already is that we have a margin showing, because like there is no margin showing on this screen. So that's already been logged though for Retail Pro to consider changing, right, and updating. It's taxable, that's fine. Click on our little scale, assign a scale, we get our colors, we get our sizes, we can click edit attribute and size, we can drop some colors in here, right? So far it's really, really similar to other versions of Retail Pro. So over here, I'm just gonna go ahead and put some, I don't think I've given it a price and a cost yet, have I? Oh yeah, right over there. Good, we're good. So what's going on with my quantities here? All right, I'm embarrassed to say that I do not know what's going on. Why I cannot get it my quantities in here. Usually it's pretty easy to do. Probably because everybody's watching, right? Try it again here real quick. All right, so if we select a size run and we add a color, Click OK. We're still unable to make sizes. And I'm not sure what's wrong with my demo here, but normally it would be exactly the same as every other version, right? We would type zeros in left to right, and it would define skews in the system. Let's see, will it let me edit an existing one? Search. Style details. Apparently not. Well, I will have to investigate that, and I can do that on my own time. I apologize for that, guys. Um, all right, so that's our style view. We still obviously have an item view. In an item view, we can obviously add items. So to add an item is pretty much the same thing, right? We would just key in, we would put in whatever department code we need, right? And put in our description. Right. See, that's weird that it wouldn't let me edit quantity over there, but it probably will let me edit it here. But you wouldn't normally put a quantity in here anyway, right? Save. Right now, in 2.1, and I think that if I test 2.2, I'll find that they've resolved some of these issues. But in 2.2, we had some trouble with these reason codes here. I had to turn off the requirements. Now, just because the requirements are turned off doesn't mean I can't choose to use them, right? The problem we had was that this one would be grayed out, and it would want us to answer that question, when in fact we're not editing the quantity. We're only editing the cost and price. But I turned off the requirements, but I still use them. Um, On the right-hand side, we have our rest of our information, description 3 and 4, and other fields. Price cost, this includes our price levels, right? And we can see the margins here, right? The quantities, so you can see all locations now in the on-hand of all stores. Sub-locations, they really like sub-locations, by the way, in this version. I can tell you that they make a big deal out of it during the certification. Just gonna, not that any of you want to go out and get certified, but they make a big deal out of it. So a sublocation is a feature that allows you to break one location into many little ones. Of course, you know what's going to happen. Something's going to cross the aisle, right? Something's going to move, and then the employee's not going to note it in the system. So that's the risk you have with sublocations. It can be useful if you keep it simple. If you have like a warehouse out back and you want to just say what was in the warehouse, where there's a space between you and the other location, you have to formally do something, right? Then it would be maybe not bad, but to move it from shelf A to shelf B, it's going to cross the aisle. I'm going to warn you. Anyway, purchasing, you've got all your purchasing switches here. Here's your order cost, your order date, discontinued date. Discontinued date is still a bit wacky, just like V9. Your let's go back to general here real quick. Yeah, here's your non-inventory switch right here. I thought that the orderable switch, the unorderable switch, was right in here too. Minimum order quantity, discontinued order date. Well, I could be confused on that too. Our UDF fields are right in here. They only show up after you deploy them. And then the miscellaneous tab over here at the far right has got some spiff and commission stuff, and your text fields, length, width, and height. Loyalty program. The loyalty program is part of this program. So you can define how many points you earn per item. The warning there would be that when you discount the item, the points don't change, right? So most people don't do it by item, they do it by total. So if you discount the transaction, the total dollars come down, the points go down, right? So, all right, so that's just a once over inventory. Sorry about the rocky style part, but does that make sense for everybody? And does anybody have any questions on that? Or should we move on to, well, we looked at non-inventory, we looked at price levels. We really didn't look at serial numbers or lot numbers. I can point that out, but I'm going to say that most people don't spend a lot of time on that particular feature. But in the general tab here, if I'm not mistaken, is it here? Oh, there it is right there, right? Yeah. So in edit mode, with serial number or lot number, and we'll just deal with serial for a second, you have to decide what kind of tracking you're doing. Partial is tracking at point of sale. Full is at receiving and at point of sale and the transfers, right? So in the state of California, bicycles are required to be tracked by serial number when they are sold, only when they're sold. So if a policeman recovers a bicycle, they can go to the bike shop and say, who does this belong to, right? Where handguns, pretty much by federal law, have to be tracked at receiving and at the front door and transferred and adjusted and everywhere, right? Kind of makes sense, actually. So you'd set your type as to how you're going to track. Then you could go to the serial number database, right? And you could add serial numbers here. So serial numbers are beneath the item, right? So when you sell them, you could grab from that pool. And that's probably enough here, unless somebody's seriously thinking about deploying serial numbers. So well, lot numbers are roughly the same thing, except lot numbers have to do with pharmaceutical drugs, right? So with drugs, they have an expiration date, and if you sell a drug past its expiration date, it's not like selling a Twinkie past its expiration date. People get angry about that, right? So with drugs, you assign a lot number, and then you put an expiration date on it, and then it won't let you sell it past that expiration date. So I think that wraps up the inventory part. So should we go look at purchase orders? And so far, I got to say, Justin's the only one participating here. Not to be critical, just saying. So if you have questions, don't be shy. All right, so back in store operations, we have purchasing and receiving. They've split them up into separate menus now, which is fine. They don't need to be in the same one, right? To do a purchase order lookup, we would go to the lookup screen, click search, and or add some things to our search. I skipped over the searching drop downs in inventory, but they're all the same. In all cases, you have the ability to go in and pick a field, right? So I could go in and pick PO number, and I could put in something here containing a 1, whatever. I could keep going, though. I could keep adding fields, right? I could go get vendor code, and I could then say, every PO from Nike that has a 1 in it somewhere, right? Hoping that works. Okay, well, I got one PO from Nike. It happens to be actually number 1. Okay, excellent. But the search worked, right? And then you can click these little X's and close it. Same thing in inventory. I could search by multiple fields, right? I could search by description 1, description 2, vendor, department, whatever I want to add to the window on the left, right? This little checkbox kind of bugs me a little bit. I would like to be able to just click on the item and highlight the row and have that be enough. But you see the OK button doesn't light up here. You have to check it off. So it's a small navigational tip that you have to get used to, right? Once you're used to it, it's actually not that bad. It's pretty straightforward. And then you can see your PO and play with it, your basic PO. So let's click new, and let's just start in fresh right on a new PO. We have our associate. It'll assign a number at the end, just like V9 in that sense. It won't show you the number until you click save. But if you wanted to put a number in there, we could put a number in there, then it will adopt that number, right? So if you have a PO number from a show, yeah, put it in, right? Pick a vendor, go grab some items, right? So you could certainly look up items, and in version 9, not so much in version 8, but in version 9 you can use wildcard lookups, right? So here you can use a wildcard lookup, not terribly efficient for a purchase order, I'm going to say. So I'm just going to cancel that. Just going to let you know that you can, using a wildcard and asterisk, you could say, whatever word you wanted to say. And if you put an asterisk on both ends, it finds all matches. If you put an asterisk only on the beginning, it must end with that word. If you put an asterisk on the end, then it must start with that word, right? Let's just get rid of that. Okay, so we click the little magnifying glass. It opens up the inventory. Again, we have that search right there, and we could have taken advantage of the search, or I could pull any of these fields here, right? And then drop them into the search on the side. Once I find what I'm looking for, and I'm gonna collapse this down to make it it's a little bit easier to see what we're doing here. And of course, this is a sandbox, so I literally have Birkenstock items defined by a Nike vendor code. Completely wacky here, right? But that's what you get when you get a sandbox, right? So here's our doc quantity column, right? So here's where we could say we want 6 of those, and we want 6 of those, and we want 2 of those, and 5 of those, and 8 of those. So this part is exactly the same, right? Up. I hit one that did not have the same vendor, didn't I? And it got angry at me. So the little red box popped up and said, you hit one that was not the right vendor. So let's click return to document down here in the bottom right corner, and it should bring back all of those items in the various quantities that I selected while I was out there in inventory. So in that respect, it's exactly the same as every other version. And that's important because actually 1.14 and early 2.0 versions did not have this next feature, right? So if we're going to go click on the magnifying glass here, the ability to create a new item did not exist in earlier versions of Prism, and it was a huge issue. We were putting the brakes on and not moving forward with the product because being able to create new items while you order them is cool. I'm just going to say it's actually brilliant. But defining a new item is just the same as defining a new item. We can go to style mode, we can go to item mode. Who knows? It might even work in style mode, right? So, but the process is exactly the same as what we went over a few minutes ago. So I'm not sure we should waste a bunch of time reliving something that I already failed at today, right? So creating a PO with existing items or items that need to be created. Looks like we've done both of those. What's not on this outline is allocation. So I guess I should bump into that really quick. Show allocation. Right, so down here is my store. So if I turn on show allocation, this little thing I'm sort of shaking the mouse on here, right? And then pick an item, it then shows the allocation down here, right? So I should be able to edit this if I'm not mistaken. Allocation pattern, even. Let's go crazy. Let's go entire document. Okay, and let's pick an item. Right, so I said make it even allocation, which I obviously built the allocation pattern before. And in an even allocation, everybody has the same number, right? You put a 1 on every store, you put a 10 on every store, it doesn't matter as long as they're even, right? Now, this particular item I landed on happens to not be an even quantity, right? It's 5, so it had to make a choice, right? And it threw 3 in the warehouse and 2 in the store, right? I only got 2 inventories in this sandbox. And I should be able to change that, and I'm not sure why it's not letting me in there. Oh no, it is letting me in there. Never mind. So I could change my mind. Now I could change it and just have it go to 4, just like version 9 or version 8, right? Or I could say, no, I want to keep the 5 and I want to bump the other one up, right? I mean, that's totally up to me, right? But yeah, yes, if you change the overall quantity, it will change the order quantity in the background, right? So that goes part and parcel with this thing here, right? So the drop ship and marked for, right? So if you're marked for, then you're receiving it at one location and you're doing your own distribution. If your drop ship is being separately received at every location, right? And that all that's verbatim, all that's exactly the same as previous versions. We're not talking about anything excitingly new here, right? Just where you navigate to it, right? That's all it comes down to, really, in here. All right, so let's click save. Okay, so I'm gonna drop ship on a test 1, 2, 3, 4 PO. Any questions? Let's see. No questions. All right, fair enough. Now we should probably print this real quick. Let's see what we have in our print menu. Single PO, and pull a design file out here. I think we're going to go with. We'll try this one here. See what this one looks like. Right. So I put a logo on there. It's a cool headshot back east somewhere. FYI. You know, there is a doc designer here. We're allowing the descriptions to wrap, which the client actually liked, because you can have bigger font now. I mean, we could reduce the font size and make it harder to read and get it all to be one line, right? Or we can actually let it wrap and go with a larger font, knowing that you're still going to be able to read it, right? That's a choice that we get to make, right? So anyway, the doc designer though is here in this version too, and has some pretty cool. It's a little bit more complicated to use because you can actually write some code in there, and you can add fields together. You can do things in this doc designer you can't do in the other ones. So maybe that's probably a good thing. All right, so then let's back out of here and try and receive against this thing, right? So receiving new voucher. Come on. My little VM, I'm pushing it just a bit. Okay, reference PO number. Now I can go look them up, right? Just like before. Now here, POs have dates, so you get to say what the dates are, right? And then click search, and it should show us all the POs in that date range. And apparently there's only one. Then of course we would go to, come on, thank you, reference the PO. There we go. Then we would get to go to PO items, and we would see the items, and we could go in here and edit our document quantity, right? So I could go say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, or I could just say all do here at the bottom, right? And just drop them all in at their pre-designed quantities. Now here, of course, I could change these, right? So I'm going to say typically, when you get everything's right except one, I'm going to say all do, come back, change the one that's wrong, right? I'm not going to waste time typing in 15 if I could just change one. Now, to come back to Justin, to your question about screen design, there is a screen design function put into this version to facilitate this section right here, the item section on any document and the item section in inventory. So whereas I can't really move the vendor code field right at the top there, or I can't move the reference PO number field, I can add ALU to this if I don't want to see UPC, because clearly here I'm not 100% UPC. I'm going to want my ALU, and I may not want to see foreign currency cost, right? So there is a function. This webinar is not really about that function, but there is something called grid formats in the system preferences, and in there is every screen that you can change, and you can select which screen you want to change, and it lets you arrange the fields in there, and then you can push that out to the screen. So you have a little bit of control over that, right? For the items, at least the item descriptions, to see what you want. Okay. Right. So we can certainly go ahead. Question. All right. So yeah, correct. So Justin was just agreeing with me, and thank you again for participating. It's nice when everybody participates. All right. So POs. Obviously, we also can receive obviously without a PO, right? We don't have to have a PO. So referencing a PO without referencing a PO, but without referencing a PO, it's just like the PO we built, right? You just click new on a voucher and skip the PO field and dive into the magnifying glass and go get items, right? Just like writing a PO. Not recommended for large orders, especially if you don't have the items defined already. Then you're really bottlenecking receiving. You're slowing down your whole process. So it's weird that POs are more about organization than they are about knowing what you have on order. Anyway, freight. So let's talk about freight and fees. And right, so voucher details. All of the transactions, POs too, by the way, have this details function where you can throw things in, right? So here you can open up the transaction level and you can put in the freight, right, if you need to. You could put in a fee. We could pick a fee type. All of our fees are defined as fee, but we still could throw one in there if we want to, right? You can, in system preferences, change those. Like that could say, deposit, or that could say, hey, we got an unknown error. Nice. We got a discount field. We've got a tax field nobody much uses. We still have the ability to spread costs, right? So I could go in and say I'm going to spread these, or I'm going to spread freight and not discounts, right? I actually have a client who does that, but they're in the National Park Service and their margin is regulated. So they spread the freight, but they don't spread the discount so that they can charge a little more, right? Smart people out there, right? All right, so and now reconciliation. I mean, the vendor here. Here's where you would add an invoice, right? You could add an invoice number and an invoice date. So in the normal process of reconciliation, or I say purchasing, receiving, there are three pieces. There's purchasing it, receiving it, and then receiving, and then reconciling it, right? So if we make a mistake, we then have to return that voucher back out. I don't think there's a reverse yet on vouchers, but you have to return it back out, and then you have to re-receive it back in. Then the final step would be to put the invoicing information into that document, if that makes sense. Close. You can copy, but see, there's no reverse down here yet. But you could copy it, make a quick return, copy it again, make sure it's a receiving, and then make your final correction. So you receive $10,000, you return 10,000, you're back to square one. Then you copy it again and make a receiving for 10.5, and you make all your changes for quantity and cost, right? So all the rules about reconciliation are exactly the same in this version as they are in all the previous versions, right? Because receiving is so closely tied to accounting. If you credit inventory, you have to debit it back out and make a correcting credit, right? That's how it works. So, all right. So, right. So then, print update. So we can get our focus on this VM here and see if we can get it to react. There we go. I don't have any custom designs apparently in here. So I'm just going to take a look at the default here, which is not bad actually. Completely back of the house transaction, right? So no customer or no vendor is ever going to see this one. So it's going to go from the receiver to the accountant. So not a bad design. I've tweaked a few of them. I don't have them loaded, and we could tweak some more. Now here, they've allowed the wrapping, right? They've allowed the wrapping. You can see underneath there, there's another word in that phrase, right? But it's wrapping down, and they didn't leave enough room for it. They didn't allow it to grow. So we're getting that weird little phantom piece of data there, which we could go fix in the doc designer, right? If we wanted to. We either make the thing smaller font, wider, or just give it the ability to expand, right? Sorry about that, guys. We had a little tech question we had to answer there. So, excuse me. My wife's been trying to get me sick, apparently. So the last thing we have really on our list here, and hopefully I've answered everybody's questions. If there's any other questions, let me know. But the last thing that apparently on our list here is PO maintenance, which is kind of important if you don't clean up your POs as you go. Now you see right here in our search, we have active, inactive, and all, right? So clearly if we're searching for active POs, right? We find a PO and we say that one's done. We could click on it, click OK. Now, I wish we could do something here, but we can't. So you have to just uncheck the active mark here, right? In the top right corner, there's a little mark that says active, inactive, or not active, and just unchecked it, right? That's all we get to do, right? So we can then retire that one to being not there, right? And if I were then now the options menu is a good place to look if you're going to go back to lookup. They put in links to go and re-look up things. And of course, this one should not come up now, right? So test 1, 2, 3, 4 is no longer floating to the top because I didn't select inactive on the left. I'd left it on the default, which is active. I should mention, let's see here. Now let's go back to inventory for a second. Just dawns on me that I could take a second, and if you want, we can go look at that grid format thing here in a second if there's nothing else in the regular agenda that we need to go over. But this was not a tough topic today. I got to say, purchasing and receiving is not a deep topic, right? In here though, I will take a second to to notice that I picked a description one, which I think is that's a pretty fair description, right? That's a pretty solid field. Notice that the default value on the right of description one is equals. That's bugged some people. I mean, it's very many times, I would guess most times, that we don't know exactly how it's typed in there, right? So we probably want to change that to contains most of the time. That is also logged as an issue with the software that they were looking at maybe fixing. It should either default to contains or at least let us choose our default, right? Would be my choice. So, yeah, everything's got a letter T in it. Okay. There you go. Cotton has a T in it, right? Shirt has a T in it. It's not lying. All right, so let's take a quick peek at that other config, unless anybody has any questions. If you have questions, don't be shy, right? So in inventory, and we are going to focus on that voucher screen. So let's go down in here to node selection, right? And now I'm in the company. Actually, I'm not in the company. I'm above the company. So let's go into, so this particular VM here, I have two companies set up. This particular client that I was working with has a wholesale business and a retail business, and they want them separated. So I'm going to go inside the retail business. Now I'm inside the retail side, right? And I'm going to come down to grid formats. And then we're going to select in grid formats, we're going to select the voucher ASN. Scroll down a bit. And so you see here, UPC is first. Maybe I don't want UPC at all, right? Maybe I just want ALU. I hop that over, come down here and drag it up to the top, right? DCS, vendor code 1, 2, size, attribute, quantity, cost, all good. But I don't really need foreign currency cost, right? So I'm going to check that. And I might want to know the retail price, right? I mean, I might want to know the extended cost. That's optional. I don't know though. That might be on the print job, and that might be more the accountant's thing, right? So maybe we don't need that here. Price, though, it might be nice to see the price. I don't see much else there that's making me excited about adding it to the screen, right? I mean, if we had serial numbers, then we'd want to add the serial number. Yeah, so now if we save this, okay, so let's click save. And now if I want to see this, because Prism uses a Apache server, a little Apache web server is built into Prism. In fact, two actually. If we click on this, I believe we can see that open services. What do we got here? I thought we could just click on it and it would show us. Oh yeah, right there, Apache and a Crunch 10 Apache, right? So we're actually running two different versions of two instances of Apache, one for Retail Pro and one for the report module, right? So Crunch is the report section. So we saved this. We're going to exit out of here. We're going to log out. Now, because it's a web environment and it's a web server, we have to delete the web memory, or what they call cache. To do that, we are going to type a few keystrokes. In fact, I will write them down to make sure that I'm not being really, really obtuse here, right? So to clear the cache, we have to hold down Control plus Shift. Yes, that's right. Plus delete while hopping on your left foot counterclockwise. No, just those three is enough. And then that's gonna then we're actually gonna select clear data, right? We're gonna select it and tell it to clear the data. Then we need to Control plus Shift plus R to reset. So let me just show you what that looks like. So here we are on our main login. We do the Control Shift Delete. It pops up and says, hey, do you want to clear the data? We say, yep, we want to clear the data, right? Boom, clear the data. Then you can close that. We don't need that anymore. I'm going to do a Control Shift R right now. And it's taking way longer than it should. Okay, well, I think you guys all caught that, right? Usually it just flashes real quick. Doesn't quite go crazy like that, but it does reset. It actually forces it to reread the data right back up from the web server. Then log back in. Now, if you choose to be crazy like I was and not log out, that little spinny bar that goes in the middle of the screen, it'll just start spinning. Like it'll just keep spinning. I'm just going to tell you, probably you have to bail on it, close the web page and go back in fresh, right? So let's go take a look now and see if anything I did actually worked, right? So receiving, voucher, search. That's a spinny circle. If you try and reset it, clear the data without leaving, you get that for like ever. Okay. Check that off. Click OK. Take a look at our items. Okay, we start with ALU now, right? We dropped the foreign currency and we added the price in, right? So, and you saw that there was quite a list of areas that you can do this in, right? So typically, like inventory and inventory from a document are two different screen sets. So, and I'm going to want that to look the same. And when we get to those kinds of areas, in fact, there's two things to be considered. Really wasn't a system preference meeting, but we kind of do sort of bump into it. When you're making transactions, you got to make the transactions look right. But I'm going to just tell you to be warned that there's a lot of areas where you have inventory lookup. An inventory lookup has both the search by box and the show columns box. So we just did the show columns box back on the voucher, right? So this is what's going to be in the in the drop-down menu for searching, right? And I don't mind searching by ALU or UPC, but probably I'm looking for something more like that, right? So I'm probably going to be moving that up, if you see what I mean. Because they're going to show in the order that they're in here. And in most cases, I don't need, like, it starts usually with serial numbers and lot numbers, and we usually end up checking those right away. And then we have to add attribute and size. They're usually not here. So just FYI, right? That's some of what goes on. The searching side, and then down here we have to go to range it. Now notice that I've got description 1 first, right? Normally we would have item number first, right? And I'm kind of excited. Maybe 2 point. No, it won't be. It won't be on. The fix that we got today was 2.1.2, but by somewhere around 2.2 or 2.3, they're going to give us the ability to change width of fields. But I don't think that's. I think all we have today is a fix that I'm gonna load. But you see, when I go into inventory and I click search, the columns are going to come up at that width forever. Notice that the first column is much wider than the other columns, right? That's why I put description 1 in the first position. So I don't have to widen the damn column every time, right? So maybe by next year, maybe by late this year, we'll have the ability to decide how wide the column are and have it stick, right? But not today. I'm going to warn you. That's not there. So one of these days, right? All right. So does anybody else have any other questions about anything here related to the purchasing and inventory, or about Prism or reports in general? One thing I can show you real quick, I guess, since the question was kind of asked and we started down the path but never got there. If we go into our C drive, there's a hidden folder called program data. You have to make sure you're showing hidden folders, okay? In there we have Retail Pro, and we have server, and we have our web clients. In the web client, I can provide to you a folder called customizations, and we can put customizations in there. So this customization right here specifically is the one. That's the HTML that is doing the item customization that we saw in the receipt. That's what's telling the receipt to go 3 lines and where to put what. So that's basically what it is. You copy the HTML out of the existing code and you put it into your own HTML file and drop it in there, and then it reads the customization stuff last, right? It loads Prism, then it goes and looks and sees if you have any customizations, and then it deploys those over the top, so they're the last thing to load. That's why it looks the way it looks when we open it up. Since we're right in this neighborhood, let me just click up on web client and hop into locale. Locale has these files. These files here are the translation files. So let me just see if I can show you what I'm talking about here. So here's the French. I think. Let's see if I can find a better example. I'm not sure what HE is, but you see that the HE file is 408 KB on the far right-hand side here, and that the HE custom is nothing, a 0-byte file. So the English US used to be the same way. So I opened the English US in Notepad. I selected all. I copied. I closed the base file. I opened the custom file, and then I just pasted everything in here. So you start by bringing over the entire list of what it is you want. Then you can do a click on it. Since you're in Notepad, you can just go edit find, right? You can go find what you want. I think mine was right down here. Yeah, so here this used to say new transaction, and I just changed it to say new receipt. And then I changed the transaction lookup to be receipt lookup, right? Then I saved that. I did that little refresh thing, and boom, we got translation on our stream. If that makes sense to everybody. So, and I realized that we're dropping people like flies here, left and right. We're down to 5. So we started with like what 10 or 11. So this is pretty boring stuff. I get that. But it's nice to know that you can configure it yourself and make it fly the way you want to, right? So I mean, ultimately you do have some customization ability. That's not the default background either, right? So I loaded this customization that has these icons and these discolorations, and those can be changed a bit. And so we can play with it. There's some things we can do. Anyway, I've wasted a perfectly good hour of your time. Um, hopefully it was beneficial to everyone. Uh, and with that, I think unless there's other questions, I'm going to tell you guys to have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. You guys take care. I'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.
Right.